Welcome back to another episode of Civic Cast, the podcast for engaged citizens. I'm Jeremiah Kimmelman, and I'm joined, as always, by Jason Denizek. This episode, we are fortunate enough to talk to Alex Pandel, who is one of the founders of Civic Insight and a former Code for America fellow. Thank you for joining us, Alex.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. So first, kind of obvious question, what is Civic Insight, and why did you start it?
So, Civic Insight is what's being called a civic startup these days. We are a technology company that is working to unlock critical data about properties that is traditionally locked inside of government databases and make it easily searchable, understandable, and easy to make informed decisions about the future of your neighborhood based on this data. And so this really came to be because I was actually a Code for America fellow in 2012, and my fellowship team and I were working with the city of New Orleans, and we were one of the teams that actually got a pretty clear directive from our city partners that they wanted us to focus on a specific issue, which was blight and vacancy in New Orleans. And New Orleans is sort of like the poster child for those kinds of issues, what with Katrina, but it's actually been a much longer forming problem than that, since kind of urban flight for ever since the 60s has been leaving a lot of empty homes, essentially, which in the swamp-like conditions of New Orleans, they start to decay and become eyesores and cause all kinds of problems for the neighborhood. And something that we saw as fellows when we were down there actually talking to citizens, talking to neighborhood groups, talking to city staff, was that there were already actually a lot of pretty organized and capable organizations throughout the city who were trying to resolve the same problem simultaneously that the city was, and what they were missing was sort of an information bridge that would allow them to all work together. They just didn't know what the city was already doing and where groups like Habitat for Humanity or Rebuilding Together could actually pitch in and not just do the same thing over and over again. And we saw that all that data actually existed within City Hall. The city just didn't really know how to get it out there in a way that was actually useful. So we ended up building a tool that made it really easy to search for properties, receive email alerts as things changed, and kind of consume this information as a non-expert in how government works. And when we launched as fellows, we started to hear from cities across the country like, hey, we have the exact same problem, like how can we do this? And so we decided we wanted to keep working on it after the fellowship, and it seemed like the best way to do that in an actually sustainable way was to start a for-profit company around it. So that's where we are.
Great. So that's actually what I wanted to ask you about next. So you were working for a year about in this really experimental mode, building this project out, tackling this city issue. What was the thought process around deciding to form a company around it? How did it come to be that that was the logical next step for you?
I mean, cities were saying, how much is this thing? How do I get it? We saw right away that there was actually a real value, not just to residents, but actually to city staff as well, because something that we saw in New Orleans and have since seen in basically every city that we've worked with since is that this constant need for information from the public actually slows down the internal work that the city is doing. Like, you're an inspector, your job is actually to be out in the field inspecting properties, but actually you spend like a quarter of your day answering phone calls, answering emails, trying to forward people to the right person who can access the database to give you the answer. And so cities really saw a value there, and for us, I don't know, I think it really helped that my co-founder, Eddie, is definitely a natural entrepreneur, and for him, he was just like, let's do this, like, I think we can make it happen. I knew that I wanted to keep working on the problem, and I wanted to keep working on the product, and so together with our third co-founder, Amir, who's also on our fellowship team, we kind of were just like, let's do this. It was also helpful that CFA like clearly wanted to support projects. They were really struggling to find ways to make fellowship projects live on and be sustainable, and the idea of like handing it off to your city or like maybe working on it in your spare time seemed sort of not real. So it also coincided with a time when CFA was thinking about investing in this kind of potentially for-profit work that spins out of the fellowship. So it was sort of a perfect storm of factors that made it make sense.
And one of the things that happens after that, I guess, would be you get a lot of inbound requests. It sounds like you were saying government's kind of saying that you wanted, you know, how much is this? Can we have it now? Okay, so when that stops, and when you need to sell to governments, how do you do that on a small team? I mean, how did you think about that as you were incorporating the company, and then even now, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really helpful that you know, CFA really is a great trumpet for our successes. We're also, the Knight Foundation is one of our investors, and they also have a great network, and so we've really just done a lot of marketing around successful launches with current customers, which really, something that we've learned pretty quickly was that governments really rely on referrals from their peers. They kind of aren't going to trust anyone else. They're really going to trust other governments that they see as leaders in the areas that that are important to them, in the fields that they're focusing on. So you know, we've been lucky that New Orleans was our very first customer, and they're seen as very, very innovative in using data to drive better community outcomes. So a lot of cities are already looking to them, and so you know, they've done a great job of helping trumpet the success. The city of Palo Alto was our second customer, and they're the same way. They're really they're a leader in kind of centralizing development services. So like normally when you apply for a building permit, you literally have to go to like 6 different physical buildings, and in the city of Palo Alto, they've located experts from all of the various disciplines that need to review your plans and actually put them in one building. And so Palo Alto is sort of considered a leader. So having those kinds of innovators as our early adopters has helped us kind of stay current and stay in the news and stay relevant, so that we don't have to do as much like cold calling. What's really crazy is, like, I think this is going to change, but like we still haven't really done a lot of cold calling. Like we still do kind of rely on inbound interest and referrals from current clients. I don't know if that's like sustainable forever, so we're starting to build out that kind of process now. But you know, being present at conferences, being in the media, in publications that city folks actually read has been important. But it's hard, you know, we're scrappy, we do what we can. A lot of it is also having to really ask the hard questions and get almost a no as soon as possible, so you don't spend a lot of time with folks who actually aren't ready to work with you. We had to learn that the hard way in the beginning. Some, you know, our sales cycles have gone from like this long to like this long, but like, hey, that's a big improvement. So
totally,
yeah,
that'd be a big improvement for the government to have that,
right,
in general. But
yes.
So that's interesting, and that's awesome and fortunate that you all have not had to deal necessarily with this problem of the runway being much shorter than the sales cycle.
Right.
But as you're architecting this process, is there anything for people who are thinking about civic startups that they might want to consider, right, like as they're building that out, or is it just kind of be present, be top of mind?
Be top of mind, be a thought leader, I think is important. Like actually be putting content out there that's useful for just folks in their everyday jobs, then that helps them remember you. But I also think like just do a good job with your first few customers, and they'll be really happy to be references to you. And I think honestly that seems to be the most valuable thing out there in the government space, at least. It's like a niche area, but in government, you know, they're constantly being sold at, and so it's nice to kind of be able to find the signal in the noise when they can kind of turn to a peer and be like, well, what do you think about these guys, you know? And so I think working on case studies is useful, and publishing that kind of stuff. But I don't know, we're not experts, we're still figuring it out, but yeah, happy to give any advice that I can.
And I think a lot of people who would maybe consider themselves civic technologists or civic hackers maybe find themselves in the same shoes and don't really consider themselves salespeople. But that's really what we're talking about here, right? Is sales. Yeah. How do ideas spread from city to city? How does innovation spread? So one of the things that struck me is this question. I mean, CIOs from cities talk to each other.
Yeah.
What have you learned about what do they say to each other? Where do they say it? How do they get advice from each other?
Yeah, I haven't really like discerned like this is the way it's done. I'm still kind of figuring that out. But what's really interesting is like somehow I got stuck on maybe you guys are on it too, the like municipal innovation email thread that actually is like run through Code for America. I'm not sure if that's what the peer network is or if it's something different, but it's like an email list. And what's increasingly happening is like I think it used to be seeded by some CFA staff with like large-scale questions about city issues. But what I keep seeing is cities being like, hey, have you heard of Nextdoor? Should we engage with them? And then like other city people pipe in and they're like, yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Like, it doesn't cost anything or whatever. And so, I mean, that's one where I've seen it actually firsthand. Everything else has been more word of mouth, like talking to our customers and then finding out, like, how do you hear about new things? Like, how do you vet products that you're trying out? And a lot of it like, conferences that government folks go to, like, yes, it's for the content, but a lot of it is to have the opportunity to actually network with their peers and sort of like talk shop about this kind of stuff and see like how are you guys solving that problem, like what products are you using, what services are you using, what do you think of them. And so it's funny being at a speaker at conferences. I'm always like, oh, wait a second, like no one's really here to see me. They're all here to talk to each other and like go get lunch and sit in the corner. And I think that's actually a really good place for word to spread. So interesting.
And there's a tremendous amount of interest in this space. You started with the air quotes of civic startup.
Yeah.
And that's like the new hotness.
It's a new thing.
Right? GovFund got $23 million. Y Combinator says, hey, we take government startups too.
Right.
So I have to believe that there's going to be a lot of technological entrepreneurs who are interested in getting into this space.
Yeah.
From your perspective, what concerns are unique to the domain of government startups? Like as these people are moving from platform or consumer technology plays to maybe governments, what is different and what's the same?
I mean, so the thing that's been really hard in my eyes is like, I mean, the sales cycle, like we've already spent this whole time talking about sales, and I do think it's just a totally different beast than if you're like making a consumer photo app and people can just download it and pay $1 and then you have it and you have revenue. Something that's unique to that is maybe not unique to our company, but is like seems to be somewhat common in the space, although I don't think it applies to every civic startup, is like if you're actually selling to government, but it's a tool that's going to be used by residents or the primary user is not government, it's like this whole extra channel where you're trying to, I feel this tension all the time being actually like a designer by trade and doing also a lot of sales, is having to defend the integrity of the product choices that we're making that are good for the user when the government, who's actually the customer that we're trying to get to buy the thing on behalf of their citizens, are saying, oh, no, like we need 8,000 different like drop downs and extra checkboxes and stuff. And so that's sort of an interesting challenge where you sort of have to do this delicate dance between, and I don't think this is unique necessarily to government. I think a lot of enterprise companies deal with this too, where it's like maybe the end user is not actually the customer, and so you feel like you end up having to make compromises in one way or the other, which has been hard for me. So I don't know. I think be prepared for a long sales cycle, and it's very relationship based. Like you really need to have someone on the team if you're going to work in the gov space who's like really excited about spending all day talking to people. And like you need a salesperson, because it's been hard on our team because like none of us really are that. Like Eddie and I have been doing it and have been doing okay, but like we're both like, oh, I just want to work on the product. Ah! So be prepared that there's a lot of relationship building that needs to happen. There's a lot of trust that has to be developed that may not be so in other like tech startup worlds. You can kind of just like build something in the corner and people can buy it if they want it and not buy it if they don't want it, and they're the end user. Yeah, exactly. It's like you can't growth hack in government because like government isn't even on the internet. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like it's a challenge. It's a challenging space, but there's opportunity for big impact and like big social impact. So it ends up being worth it.
And how do you balance that impact? You're trying to drive this impact. You're trying to make the lives of citizens better, either through a direct technology play or making the government work better. But you're a business, you have to make money.
Yeah.
Those two things might be at conflict sometimes. How do you struggle or deal with that balance?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, what I always tell myself is, like, government is by the people, for the people. Like, government is supposed to serve the people. You know what I mean? Like, that's their job. And anytime that, so it's like we're kind of naturally aligned with that goal, like by working with us, by purchasing our product, it's helping the city actually achieve their goals, which are in turn our goals, which are, providing better services to citizens, being more transparent, being more accountable. So I don't know. I haven't really seen them in conflict yet. But it is tricky when you start talking about, like, scaling and, we would like to grow our team. Like, we're 4 right now, which is exciting. We've had a, like, full-time contractor for a while now who's amazing. But, like, we would like to be, like, 6 or 7 or something, which is still really modest. But, like, it does when you start thinking about scaling on a large scale. You do have to then really balance the social impact and be sure that you're making the right choices and aren't kind of just being like, well, this will get us money faster and then we'll be able to focus on social impact. Like, it definitely is a sacrifice to have to keep that top of mind. But, like, I wouldn't really be doing this if that weren't a part of it. So I think it just depends on the kind of person you are. Like, for me, that's just, like, I'm less a business person. Like, I think I'm maybe more a nonprofit-y type person at heart. So, like, for me, it's really easy to keep the social mission at top of mind. And I think Eddie and I play off each other in a good way with that.
Excellent. Well, we've got just a couple minutes left to wrap up for this edition of Civic Cast. I think we've talked about a lot of really interesting things today, right? We've talked about kind of first, problem discovery, getting into a community and really finding an issue that you feel that you're well suited to be able to address, right? In this case, it was blight in New Orleans. And then transitioning that into maybe a longer-term sustainable way that can help spread that insight, in this case, civic insight, maybe to other communities. And it sounds like it's been really quite an adventure. So, Alex, I'll give you the last word if there's anything you'd like to add to this story that would be of value to our listeners, to other people who might be considering starting their own civic startups.
I don't know. I think it's been a really exciting journey. I definitely think, though, it's important to really think about, if this is something you're considering, like, think about why you're considering doing it as a business that's focused on one product. I've seen that be the pattern, at least out of the Code for America community. And I'm not sure that is the model that should be dominant. Like, I think it can work for certain scenarios, but there are so many different ways of supporting a project long term. I haven't really seen anyone start a nonprofit out of CFA. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard. Being an entrepreneur in the government space is really hard and has its own unique little set of challenges. So, I would just say, be sure you understand them and that you really are excited about tackling all of them, including, like, balance sheets and, like, dealing with your financial model, as much as building a product that has social impact, because it's a tough road, but it is really fun, and it's like free business school. So, yay!
All right. This has been Alex Pandel, one of the co-founders of Civic Insight. Alex, can you throw out the URL once again real quick for our listeners?
Yeah.
And we'll add it to the show notes.
Yeah, just civicinsight.com.
Civicinsight.com. Thanks so much for having you. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This has been another episode of Civic Cast. I'm Jason Denizak, and with me has been Jeremiah Kimmelman. This is a podcast for engaged citizens. Every so often, we bring you conversations with some of the most creative minds at the forefront of improving the urban experience in the 21st century. Every show, we try to bring you some fresh ideas in civic technology. Hopefully you find them of value. Please let us know. You can reach out to us on our website, civiccast.us, as well as on Twitter, @civiccast. You can also find the episodes in a whole lot of places on our website, on YouTube, on iTunes, and on Stitcher Radio. As always, thanks for listening.